Hey everybody, today I'm going to be taking a look at these 5 filler games published by Pencil First Games. These are all designed in some combination by Steve Finn, Eduardo Borath, Beth Sobel and Clementine Campardu. Now before I get started on the reviews and ranking of these games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in my show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so I'm going to start with my least favourite and work my way up to my most favourite, and I don't want that to sound overly negative because I actually like all of these games, and if you watch my content regularly, you might know that I do actually regularly get these games to the table. So the first game here is in the biggest box of the 5. This is the What Not Cabinet. Now this is a tile drafting game. 1 to 4 players, takes around 20 minutes to play, so it is ultra fast, and this is a puzzly style game as you are drafting these tiles and then placing them on your little bookshelf and trying to build patterns. So you want to have kind of the same colour or different colours in a row and columns, as well as trying to achieve public objectives. Now the twist on this game, and to be honest, most of these games have this running theme, that it plays with the kind of initiative order as well as the kind of control you have over the game in relation to that initiative order. So the way the gameplay works here is that you'll be placing your little player pawn on this action board here, and the earlier you go in this action board, it means you're going to get first turn, but the less control you have. So for example, if you went right at the start here, you'll simply draw, I think, 3 tiles from the bag blindly. You'll keep 2 of them and discard the other one. But the further you go down the line, you might say, fill up the common supply and then get your free choice of taking 2 of those tiles. Again, you have a lot more options and more flexibility at the sacrifice of an initiative order, which can be important because that public display of tiles can change by the time it gets to you in player order. And you can even take a complete punt and wipe the public display of tiles and hopefully get the exact one you want, which can be useful towards the end of the game as your cabinet gets filled up. As you can imagine, your options are quickly squeezed down, and kind of one wrong placement in the wrong space can completely hurt your scoring. So this is a game of small margins. It's very light in terms of its gameplay. Again, it's going to be a couple of points in between the winner and the loser in this one, and it's all about getting that optimal tiles in the right places, and sometimes even a bit of a push your luck mechanism, because you know, if you're going to get all of the same colour in a column, then that's not too easy to do, but you are going to get more points for doing so. Or do you want to play a bit safer and try to go for 1 of each, maybe get all the same in a row instead, and try to kind of cross-hatch that to work with all of the different rows and columns. Again, ultra breezy, super quick, and it is a pleasant game. You know, I have played quite a lot of games like this where you are arranging things, you know, games like My Shelfie come to mind. But this one, yeah, it's kind of completely inoffensive. It's not the best game on the market, but it's completely fine. You can teach this to non-gamers. And you know, I think it's enjoyable. I'd happily play this one anytime, anywhere, really. Do I think it has the claws and the grip to really hold its own in my collection long term? I'm not quite sure it does. You know, right now I'm content with it. I'll play it several more times, but is it going to hold up to the great filler games that have that constant hook and engagement to keep you coming back? I'm not sold on that because it is so light, and sometimes you are really dependent on the luck of the draw on the tiles. But if you regularly play games with non-gamers and you like arranging things, and you do have sometimes those exciting moments where you draw the right tile at the right time that fits perfectly on your shelf, and that happens more often than not actually, or happens quite regularly for those fun moments. So you know, a very soft recommendation to the right group, again that lighter level of game group. That is the What Not Cabinet. The next game on the ranking is Sunset Over Water. Again, 1 to 4 players, 20 minutes to play on average. Now, this is a kind of a set collection style game as you are navigating around this big grid of these beautiful cards. I mean, the artwork in this game is quite spectacular. Each player has their own kind of player piece. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect these landscape cards which will have certain features on them and try to match them with these public contracts. So some might say you want an objective with a waterfall and a mountain on it, and again, if you're the first to complete that by collecting those cards, you'll cash them in for those victory points on that particular contract. Now, much like the Whatnot cabinet and these other ones I'm going to mention, initiative is very important with this one. So the way the game works before anyone moves and collects their cards is that you're going to simultaneously select one of these kind of action cards, which will have 3 different pieces of information on it. So you can see here from the back of the box art here, the first piece of information is the time. And the earlier that time is, bear in mind there's no duplicates at all in the decks amongst all the players. The earlier the time, it means you get priority in initiative order, and you can move and collect your cards before the other people do, which is of course great if the other person is after the same card that you are. But the second piece of information is the directions that you can move in. So sometimes they're more restrictive, where you can only move orthogonally. Sometimes they are really free, where you can move diagonally and any way you want, really. And it even shows the amount of spaces you can move. So sometimes you can move quite far, sometimes you can't move far at all. And the final bit of information on these action cards is how many cards you can actually pick up. So there really is a conflict between those and when to use your strongest cards at the right time. You know, if you need that final piece of your puzzle to get that big contract card completed, then you might want to play your early card so that you beat everybody to the punch and get that card before other people do. So it's quite nice that you're all interacting on one grid here, and you can snatch cards from each other and, you know, step on each other's toes passively throughout the game. There's a few extra wrinkles, like for example, there are public objectives where if you are the last player to do a certain thing on a turn or on a round of the game, you'll get some bonus points. And that could be things such as getting your play piece into the corner of the board, or pick up a particular landscape card with a certain symbol on it. And that can sway you at times to get, or to divert your strategy or tactics to pick up an extra point or 2. And that's pretty much what the game entails. You just play through your kind of deck of action cards until you only have 2 left, and then you total up your score, and hopefully you've collected the most points. But this one, I've played quite a lot of these grid movement style games. This one is probably my favourite one because of that simultaneous card system. I love that conflict of how early you want to go in initiative, which direction you can move, as well as how many cards you can pick up. And it's just, it's a very nice game wrapped up in a tight package. And I would say this one is probably about a 6.5 out of 10 for me, maybe even a 7 on a good day. Next up, I have Delicious. Now, out of all of these games, I think this one feels the most different because it is more of a flip and write style game. You still have a ton of set collection going on here, but it just feels different the way it actually plays. But this one is a 1 to 100 player game, as you know a lot of roll and writes are. You're looking at 20 minutes again, and the box says for 14 plus years. Now in this one, you are essentially going to try and fill up all of these kind of planters of different fruit and vegetable. And you're going to do that each round by drawing 2 cards from this deck, which will have the different fruit and veg on them. However, each one of these cards is assigned to either the top row of your player sheet or the bottom row of your player sheet, and you have to put them in the corresponding spaces. But the twist is that on your personal player sheet, you have the options to draft these cards in different ways, or use these cards in different ways. So for example, you have 4 opportunities to take a card and keep it exactly where it is. Again, either that top row or that bottom row. You have 3 opportunities to flip that around. So for example, you could take the bottom card but place it in the top row of planters. You got 3 options to take both cards, and you have 2 options to take both cards but place them anywhere you want. There's also kind of extra mini games going on, as you take these cards, there is a random token placed with these cards, which will either have a tool on it or it'll have a fruit on it. Now the fruit go in a completely different scoring category, where you are trying to create rows and columns of the same or different types of fruit. And the tools allow you to break placement rules. So for example, if you are really missing a certain type of vegetable, then you might want to use the tool to kind of break that rule and place what you want where those tools show. But you can only use that once for each tool type on the player sheet itself. Now, this is a very kind of constricting game. Again, your options very quickly run out, and you have to know when to commit and know not when to commit. But essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect either kind of pairs of different types, all different types, all the same type, that kind of thing, which again is a running theme in these games. You have a few opportunities to make cards wild, so if you are really in a bit of a conundrum and back yourself into a corner, you can sacrifice that and make it into a wild, but you have to use that quite carefully and make sure you use it to its maximum efficiency, as well as having potential scoring for each type of fruit or each type of vegetable of a specific type you have on your player sheet. So I'm not going to say it's a massive diversion from a lot of other flip and write style games, but I like that kind of restriction of this has to go in the top, this has to go in the bottom, but you have a few ways to overcome that. And there's even a little racing mechanism where if you are the first to fill up, I think all of the top or bottom row of planter of these planters, you can get some bonus points, as well as each individual planter, you'll get a bonus point if you are the first to complete it. But yeah, if you like your flip and writes, I'm pretty sure you'll like this one. Again, it can be quite frustrating at times because you can have fruit or veg coming up that you're just not able to place. But that doesn't really bother me because it is such a fast game. And out of all of these games, I think this one's been the most up and down for me. When I first played it, I liked it, but I wasn't really, mega impressed by it. But each time I've played it since, I enjoy it that little bit more, which is always a good sign for me, especially in such a bloated market of set collection games and flip and write style games. So that is delicious. Again, you're venturing on a 6.5 to maybe even a 7 out of 10 for this one. Next up, I have Herbaceous. I'm staying consistent with this one by being a 1 to 4 player game that takes around 20 minutes to play. And out of all of these, this one is more of a traditional card game. You're drafting cards and trying to build sets with them. Very simple to play, and I think this one is the lightest out of all of these, which is saying something because they're all relatively light in their own respect. But this one, essentially what you're doing is that you are drawing these cards in a Biblios style, if you're familiar with that game. And you are, one at a time, you are choosing to put one of them in either the communal row, kind of available to be drafted by not only yourself, but also the other players, and one of them in your private garden. And what you're essentially trying to do in this game is you're trying to collect sets of cards according to these 4 different scoring cards that each player has. So you are trying to collect all different types of these herbs, all of the same types of these herbs, different pairs, and you even have this kind of bonus plant pot where you can get some extra points by kind of straggler cards. But what I really love about this is that you can only ever score each of these scoring cards once per player. So if I ended up scoring all of the same cards, I can no longer score that again for the remainder of the game. So it has this kind of chicken mechanism as each player is building up this communal pool of cards, but being cautious that, the points are getting better and better, but another player might jump in there and choose to commit to score one of these categories and lock themselves out of it for the remainder of the game. But could that have been the best time? Maybe. Or could they have waited longer to score even more points? And I love that tension in this game. It actually comes through really strongly for such a simple design. That's pretty much what the game entails, but I do like that idea of cards being worth different things to different people, because I might have, a ton of a certain type of herb in my private garden, and if I'm trying to build towards a particular scoring card, for example, the one that needs all of the same type, then the cards in the common pool then might not be that important to my opponents as they are to me. So again, it might be the time for me to pull that trigger and commit to that card at different times than my opponents. But very simple stuff, just simple set collection, but that tension shines through really well. And this one, breezy as it comes. I think it's got this kind of timeless feel to it, actually. I think it's aged very well, and it feels fresh as anything out there on the market. Very attractive to look at, and a game that you could almost turn your brain off to play, but still have a good time doing it. So again, this one, Herbaceous, I'd probably say 6.75, maybe even a 7 out of 10. And the final game I'm talking about today, again, 1 to 4 players, 20 minutes to play. This is Floriferous. Now, I can quite confidently say that Floriferous is my favourite game out of this bunch, and again, I do like them all. This one is a kind of pure set collection style game, as you're collecting all of these beautiful flower cards according to these other cards that you're scoring. So you're either scoring the cards or drafting the cards themselves, or the scoring cards that correspond to the cards that you've picked. There are also public objectives, where the earlier you do them, the more points you'll get. So, for example, it might say you want a lily, a daisy, and maybe a ladybird. If you do that, then you'll get some extra points. But what I love is how you draft the cards in this game. And sadly, the back of the box doesn't really show it too well. But what you're going to do is that you are going to place all these cards in columns. Depending on the player count, there'll be more or fewer cards there. And then in player order, you will place your card or your player token on one of those cards and add it to your scoring tableau. But the twist on this one is that the lower you go down in that column of drafting cards, it means that you're going to go last in the next draft. So it has this kind of king domino system, but purely based on how the cards are laid out. But the scoring cards themselves are always on the bottom. So if you're going to want to dive deep and get one of those scoring cards, then you are going to go last in the next turn, which of course could mean that all the best cards that correspond to your scoring cards have already been drafted. So again, that conflict of control versus initiative is what this game is all about. Super pleasant to play, and there's just something about it. There's like a little magic ingredient that works with this one, and this has been a grower for me over the years. And when I first played it, I thought, yeah, this is simple stuff. It's nice, but it is what it is, really. But I think again, the more I play it, the more I'm seeing its charm, the more I'm seeing how refined it really is. And I do love that decision of when to hold back, when to commit to going deeper and sacrifice your next turn. Some additional scoring as well, like for example, there's like bouquet cards, which might give you particular cards to try and collect as well, on top of the ones you're already getting. So you have scoring within scoring here and synergizing scoring categories, as well as collecting these little stones for some bonus points, and even a little area control thing where you're trying to collect the most statues to get some extra points as well. It sounds like there's a lot going on, but this is ultra digestible. I have taught this to non-gamers and it's resonated straight away. And it's just a game that anybody, well, you can make the decisions, but the decisions they're not obvious, but they're decisions that anybody can make, and you don't have to be a gamer to understand the the levels here. It's very simple stuff, just trying to get the best. But again, when do you want to commit to giving up your next turn to get the card that you exactly want? It's a joy to play. I really do recommend it, actually, if you want a solid foundation of filler games in your collection. You want a staple set collection game that you can get played ultra quickly and teach to almost anybody, as well as looking gorgeous on the table. Floriferous ticks so many boxes, and this one is definitely a 7 out of 10, maybe even a 7.5 out of 10 for me. So there we have it. That concludes the video. This is the video I've been wanting to make for quite some time, but only just got around to doing it. So apologies if you've been waiting for this one, but hopefully this has given you what you want. Again, me ranking these 5 really nice filler games from a publisher that certainly has my attention, and I will check out everything they put out because their quality control is very, very high. I know similar games here, they have a thread of DNA that's the same, but different enough to warrant owning all of them, in my opinion, and I don't intend on parting with any of these, at least just yet. But hopefully you have enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe, and check out my other content too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.